Jared Polin, Photos.com, and this is a product showcase of the Insta360 Ace Pro 2. And this is the Ace Pro 2 right here. Now, last year, Insta360 came out with the original Ace Pro, and I took it to Kenya on safari a year ago, and I've been using it ever since. And when this Ace Pro 2 came out before I went to Kenya, I was like, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take this one to Kenya and see how good it is. Just like with the original Ace Pro, the Ace Pro 2 is co-engineered with Leica. Now, I thought it was best to take this out into the real world and run it through its paces, because there's nothing like just throwing it to the lions. I know they say wolves, but there's no wolves, there's lions. That sounds ominous, right? Lions. But there's no other better way to test this than to actually use it. Now, before we get into the setup of this camera and all of the other features, I did have some other Insta360 products with me. I used the X4 for 360 footage. I used the Go 3S on my forehead to get some first-person perspective, and I had a backup here, the 1-inch RS360 camera, just in case I needed it, but this time around, I didn't really need it, so I stuck with the X4, which is newer, as well as the Go 3S on my forehead. One of the things I like about Insta360 products is there's a ton of accessories, and it's real easy to just snap it off of one thing with the magnet attachment on the bottom, put it on another accessory, take it off, do whatever you need to do, because look, I'm gonna take it off of this thing because I wanna show you something here on the bottom. I like this. I use this accessory quite often to hang stuff out of the vehicle. But right here, you have this clip. Right now it's locked. You unlock it, it pops off like that. So you can put it on one, we can put that there, put it on the new one, like that, lock it in, and it's there. But you also have these fingery clamps. These fingery clamps right here, which use the same screwy screws that everybody has, and you can attach it to be even more secure. Now, I personally put it on the front of a vehicle just like this, and it never fell off. It didn't happen. I locked it in, and it was good to go. But my favorite accessory is the longest stick in the world. Look, it like extend it and it just keeps going and going and going and going and going. And let's see if I can touch Steven with it. Ow! I can't quite reach him, but this is like the longest stick in the history of sticks. I used this to do some elephant footage when I was panning. I tried to make it work like a jib, you know, just going up and down with the pan, and it was smooth. It worked. We'll see if the footage makes it into the cut, because Dan's doing the cut, but the accessories are fantastic. Now let's talk about the physical camera itself. The Ace Pro 2 doesn't feel chintzy, doesn't feel cheap. It has a slight bit of heft to it, but not in a way like it's gonna weigh you down, but in a way of like quality, because it feels good. I've held on to other action cameras in the past that I just wasn't happy with the quality feel because they felt more plasticky and chintzy. This does not have a bad feel to it at all. Now, new on the Ace Pro 2 is a new, wider Leica Sumerit lens right here that gives you a 157-degree field of view. Now, that larger field of view comes in handy when you're, say, in a 12-seater airplane and you want to get footage on the airplane or inside of the car, just anything where it's tight. Now, you're not always going to use the widest field of view, but the Insta360 Ace Pro 2 gives you other options like linear, you've got D-Warp, you have Mega View, and I switched through a bunch of different ones because sometimes tighter area, I wanted a wider field of view. Other times I knew I wanted to reach out and grab those animals, and I would go with something that's more linear and not bowed at the corners. Because when you go wider, you're gonna get a little bit more warping at the edges, but again, they have Mega View, which cuts down on the distortion on the edges. On the front, you do have a removable lens guard right here. You can just turn it, put it on, take it off, clean it if you need to clean it. But also, they make some accessories like an ND filter that can just pop on the front of it, and now you have an ND filter on the front of your Ace Pro 2. Next is the flip up screen. I love the fact that the screen can flip up. especially for when I'm doing vloggy McVloggersons, because it can flip over to the top. It's 2.5 inches. It's not small. Well, I guess 2.5 inches could be. It depends on who you ask. In terms of a screen, it's not very small, but I like that I can look at it and see myself and not just have a little screen right here with a preview. I get the full screen. It's bright, it's clear, it's crisp. It doesn't feel like it's going to break off when I use it. It is nice and stable, nice and sturdy, and when you're not using it, you can just flip it back down just like that. But the best part about the screen is that it controls your entire menu system. Now, yes, you could use the app, but we're not talking about that just yet. You do everything from the screen. And whether you've had an Insta360 product before or it's the first time you're using one, it's intuitive, it's easy. Whether you're swiping left, right, up, down, BA, select, start, and getting 30 people. See, I said people, but they were actually men in Contra. You were getting 30 men in Contra. It's just really intuitive and easy to use. I just quickly change from one section or from one setting to the next, all on the back of the screen, and I don't worry about it. It's just super easy to make changes. Now, one of the things that Insta360 worked on in the Ace Pro 2 is a new enhanced audio mode. You now have a wind guard on here that can pop off. You can boop, pop it, and lock it. You can leave it off. I personally left it on the whole time because I knew that we would be in a moving vehicle. But to show you how good the audio was in this, let me stick my head out of the vehicle and record a video and hear what it sounds like.
See, the thing is, when you're on the safari, you want to shoot photos, but I got to make a video too. So I use this thing as a vloggy vlog, and I can talk right to the camera.
Now, this wasn't the only Ace we had on trip because we had a special guest, Ace Ventura, Pet Detective.
Bumblebee tuna.
Now, I know I mentioned the flip-up screen, but you also have an info display screen right here on the front, so you can get some quick information, the running down of the clock, whatever else you need, your battery life, how much time you have left on recording. It's all right there, but it's also there on the back of the camera. So you have multiple options to check that out. Multiple screens is better than less screens. Now let's talk about the sensor that's at the heart of this camera. You have a 1/1.3 inch 8K sensor inside of the camera. But what's new is that you have a dual chip design, which is one for image processing and one for noise reduction. That is a welcome upgrade. Now, speaking of high res, you can do 8K up to 30 frames per second. Now, that gives you the ability to reframe after the fact, and because you have the 8K, now this came in handy when I was filming some lions as well as elephants at a distance. I knew that if I shot it in 8K that we could reframe it later because we have a lot more to work with. Now, one of the things with 8K is the camera might tell you that please make sure there's a lot of wind hitting the camera because it will use more data because it's 8K over 4K, which means it might overheat a little quicker, but I didn't have any issues with it overheating for all of the time that I was shooting in 8K, and it also didn't hurt that when I put it on the front of the vehicle, that the vehicle is moving and wind is flowing past it the whole time. Now, inside the camera, you can shoot 4K up to 120 frames per second to get you that smoother slow motion content when you're looking to get slow motion footage. You do have the option to shoot up to 240 frames per second with the 1080 mode. I generally stay out of that. I think the 120 is going to be cleaner and better, especially being 4K, but you do have the option to do 240 as well. Now, I shot mostly everything in 4K 48 because it kind of gave me the best of both worlds, because sometimes you could shoot in 24p, but I was like, let's do 48 because if we need to slow something down, I have a little bit of extra frame rate to work with, and that's why I shot most of it in 4K 48, but I also jumped around to 60 frames a second and 120 frames per second, 4K as well as 8K, so I definitely ran it through its paces. Now, enough of me talking about all of the specs of this. Why don't I show you a montage of everything in action? So let's send you back to Kenya and watch this montage. talk about running it through its paces. I put it in 8K 30, 4K 120, 4K 48, on the front of the vehicle, hanging out of the vehicle, on a long ass stick. I did a lot with it, and that montage is really cool. Now, another reason I shot in 4K 48 is because of active HDR mode allows you to go up to 4K 60 frames per second. That's new here. And the reason that's important to have the active HDR is when you're sitting in a vehicle like I was in the Land Cruiser, it's darker inside than it is outside, but the footage looks nice and balanced. That's where it comes in handy. Still, one of the best features that Insta360 has across the board is flow state and horizon lock. It's almost like you're on a gimbal or you're flying a drone, and it's just so smooth. Whether I throw it on the front of the vehicle or I'm holding it with one of the accessories or holding it in my hand, I was getting jerked around quite a bit on this trip.
Oh boy. Oh, Jesus.
And it is all sturdy and stable, and you can see how much I get jerked around, and it's still nice and stable. Now, here's a feature I used when I wanted to get closer and reach out and touch an animal, not physically, because that would be against the rules, but there's clarity zoom. So when you're shooting, say, in 4K, there's an option on the screen, you see 1x and then you see 2x. So when I wanted to compose differently or zoom in on something a little further away, I would just hit that 2x button and it would do clarity zoom. So when we tested it in the past to see if cropped was the same thing as the clarity zoom, we realized it wasn't. The clarity zoom was clearer and better, so that's why I used it more often this year than I did last year. Now, here's a feature that I didn't end up using while out on safari because, well, I got a lot of editors and I wanted to, challenge them. It's pause recording. What pause recording does is, say you're filming one thing and it's an animal, and then it switches to the other side of the vehicle, you could pause the recording with one press of a button on the screen and then move to the other side of the vehicle, hit start again, and it's going to keep it in the same clip. So you have less clips to work with in the end. In this case, I would just film, hit record, hit stop, and do that. I could have just hit pause record, but I didn't. Sorry, editors. Now, what about battery life? We all know that action cameras in the past didn't have the best battery life in the world, but I will say I banged out 1 hour, 22 minutes, and roughly 6 seconds in 4K 48 with this bad boy on the hood of our Land Cruiser to see how far we could take the battery. So it went all the way for that amount of time without stopping. And at the end, it's like, well, the battery's exhausted, it saved all the files, and it was ready to go. Now, speaking of charging, being that it used all of the battery, I can charge up to 80% in 18 minutes. So I would take it off the front of the vehicle, plug it into one of my portable USB-C chargers, and in 18 minutes it was back up to 80%. And if you want to take it all the way up to 100%, it takes 47 minutes. So I was really happy with the battery life. Usually I'm trying to watch my battery life, but in this case, I knew that I had a ton of power, and if I needed to charge it quickly, I can get that quick charge in 18 minutes. Now, there is another feature around battery life. You can get endurance mode. Endurance mode. If you shoot in 4K 30, it can go for up to 50% longer with the battery. So if you need to just stretch it longer, because 2.5 inches isn't working, then you can just go into endurance mode. For those of you who find yourself videoing in lower light situations, they've updated their pure video mode. You can now do 4K up to 60 frames per second, whereas with the original Ace Pro, it was 4K up to 30 frames per second, and you can absolutely see a difference when you go into pure video mode. And that's thanks to the dual chip design of the Ace Pro 2. Now, in terms of waterproofness, if that's even a word, I didn't take it swimming because there's parasites that could swim up into your Jimmy John, and I didn't want any parasites in my Jimmy John, so I just, stuck it out in the rain and got it in the mud under the tires. The one thing you might need to do if it's getting wet is you need to clean it off every once in a while just to make sure that you have a clean field of view on the front of your camera. But if you do decide to go underwater, you can do 39 feet underwater without any additional housing. That is 12 meters for all of you guys who are on the other system, not the system that we use. Now, if you end up putting your Ace Pro 2 in a weird spot and you want to check your angles, or you want to activate it, turn it on, preview it, grab footage from it, you can use the mobile app. The app is super quick to connect. It's super quick to update your firmware. It's so much faster than it used to be that it's not even funny. And it's great that if you put this on the front of the car, you could set the recording from sitting in the car, you could start it, you could stop it, you could pull those clips from it. The app is fantastic. Also, if you want to have it do the AI highlights, that is built into the app as well. It's going to bang you out some files based off of what the AI thinks it should do, and it does a pretty good job quickly. So if you're looking for something like that, just test it out, use it, and post that clip online. Now let's move on to price. For the bundle kit, it's $399.99, but if you want to add an extra battery, it's only $419.99. Now we know that the battery charge is quick, but it is always nice to have a backup extra battery because you can go extra long. So I really enjoyed using the Ace Pro 2 in Kenya this year. I enjoyed using it last year. Now remember, this is a product showcase. I'm here to show you what the product is capable of doing by putting it out into the real world and then letting you decide if it's something for you. If you'd like to pick one of these up, there is a link down below to Insta360's website. It's in the description, and you can go ahead and pick one up if you would like. But I want to thank you guys very much for watching. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.